Hello everyone, Nintendo here. Recently a rumour was circulating about a Game of Thrones RPG. This was sadly announced as a hoax, or maybe done so to calm the rumours, which I hope, but it also made me think, who would really be deserving of making a Game of Thrones RPG, and could make it work properly? Well, I came up with 10 main developers who could do so, and I must first off point out this isn't including Telltale Games, as they have done a Game of Thrones game before and they've got another one in the future, just we don't know when for. Anyway, first off, let's start off with the obvious one, Bethesda. Now, I know this is a very mixed one because Bethesda aren't very known for their stories. People know they're very popular. Sure, The Elder Scrolls is one of the most popular series out there, definitely very relatable to Game of Thrones, but they aren't considered great for the story, as I said before. It's because the game is so huge and addicting, to be honest. Maybe they wouldn't be right for a Game of Thrones RPG unless they were to improve their writing, maybe stick with the Game of Thrones storyline in the books or TV show. They'd have to improve their engine as well and change the gameplay around. They'd be able to make these massive battles, and even with destructible environment, I could believe this could be a really good Game of Thrones RPG if they were to do this stuff. But I believe this probably is a bit more of the iffy choices on this list, because Bethesda, as I said before, they aren't known for these massive story-focused RPG titles. They're more for the addiction of stuff. And I said before, this has been rumoured to be in the making twice now. Once before E3 2017 and the recent Target leak. It's possible that with these two major and unannounced titles on development, that one of them could be a Game of Thrones RPG. Second off is the developer we all want to make a Game of Thrones RPG, but I'll be honest, I was middle grounded about this one again, because I honestly don't think it will happen. That developer is CD Projekt RED. Famously known for the superb Witcher series, it seems that if anyone could make a brilliant Game of Thrones game, it would be them. Heck, I'd do anything for them to make it, but as much as I want them to do, and others to do it, it's probably the least likely developer on this whole list. This is due to CD Projekt RED usually spends about 5 years developing one game. They are developing Cyberpunk 2077, which was announced back in 2012, and it's most unlikely that we'll see that until like 2019. Even then, CD Projekt RED has stated that they don't want to make another Witcher game and want to try new things out. And let's be honest, Game of Thrones and The Witcher aren't far out for being the same thing, so it's likely CD Projekt RED will pass the opportunity for a Game of Thrones RPG. First, we have another developer who could do very good with a Game of Thrones RPG, and that developer is BioWare. Now, BioWare isn't unlikely to do a Game of Thrones RPG, mostly because they are owned by EA, and EA likes getting their hands on massive properties. Game of Thrones is a massive property if you look at it any damn way, and if they were to be able to make a game for it, they'd obviously give it to the right developer, that being BioWare. After all, they have so many similarities to the Dragon Age series. BioWare are very capable of making a good Game of Thrones RPG game for the story, but I don't know if they'd be able to do it for the combat. They'd really have to rework how that works, and they'd have to make these massive battles to make it all perfect, but still, BioWare could certainly handle it. The only issue is, though, BioWare are also working on another Dragon Age game and Anthem, so the chances are slim for them a while. My fourth choice is Blizzard. Now, I usually don't want Blizzard to make anything for anything, because I do think everything they do is overrated. But they could do a Game of Thrones game if you were to borrow aspects from the World of Warcraft, maybe mix that with the gameplay of Overwatch. Well, a bit slower paced, obviously. They could make a good Game of Thrones game. The story could work well. They have really good, talented writers at Blizzard. Blizzard are actually as a whole skilled people, and a Game of Thrones RPG game or any Game of Thrones game is something they could certainly handle. Now, I don't think it'll happen from them because they don't usually do licensed games, and why would they? They have no reason to do something like that. They usually don't restrict themselves to others' intellectual property. So though they could do a good Game of Thrones game, they are probably one of the least likely to do so. Now, from here on out, the next 6 developers are some who could easily make it and more likely to do so, but have a higher chance of fucking it up. So that's fun. My fifth choice is Tellworld's Entertainment. If you've never heard of them, I wouldn't blame you at all. They are known for the Mountain Blade series, and with every developer on this list, I actually think they could succeed the most with a Game of Thrones game. Mount and Blade is built on the idea of big battles, sieges, RPG mechanics, meeting all these wacky characters. Tellworlds could easily excel with a Game of Thrones RPG. Currently the closest thing they have to it is Mount and Blade's Warbands thanks to a Game of Thrones mod, and that mod fucking rules. If somehow they could adapt that idea into a full game based off some of the aspects of the Mount and Blade series, then we could have a brilliant Game of Thrones RPG. Saying that though, it's very unlikely due to the fact they will most likely stick to the Mount and Blade series. And they are making a new one right now, actually. If anything, they'll stick to anything. The closest we'll ever have to it, a Game of Thrones RPG from them, is in the form of a mod from a fan. And it may stick to that. Though saying that, Tellworlds have adapted 2 mods from Mount and Blade into full expansions. So here's hoping that maybe a Game of Thrones mod gets so much attention that, and want that we could see a full expansion, or better yet, a full game. 6th, I've chosen Creative Assembly. Now, whilst I want a Game of Thrones RPG, an open world one, I believe Creative Assembly could succeed with that and a tactical Game of Thrones game. The Total War series they made actually does have a lot with the idea of big battles, and heck, they do have some characters, though not usually characters that are well done. Now, it's not exactly unknown to them to make a game that's not a tactical game. After all, they did Alien Isolation, which is considered the best Alien game at all. Maybe if they were to redo the idea of Total War, then change it into an open world RPG, they could actually make a superb Game of Thrones game. Now, they are probably the most far-fetched for a Game of Thrones RPG game because, again, an open world RPG game isn't exactly their most well-known thing. But I think they could succeed with the task. If they could do a good alien horror game, then I think they could do a good Game of Thrones RPG game. Though then again, if they were to do a Game of Thrones game, they would most likely stick it to the formula of Total War. 7th is the only developer who I am basing it on from an upcoming game, and I'm very careful about this one because, well, they haven't actually made a title yet, but they've only got one in development. That developer is Warhorse Studios. They are currently developing Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is a story-driven first-person RPG game based in the medieval times in Croatia. If that game succeeds, then they could have a good chance of making a good Game of Thrones RPG. Now, I don't know if they'd succeed in an open world version, because so far we know that their upcoming title, Kingdom Come Deliverance, is a story-driven, non-open world game. Don't know if it's linear or not. But again, if from what we've seen, the aspects could actually be used for a Game of Thrones RPG. Now again, I'm not going to go really in depth for what they could do because I haven't got a clue how their first title will go. But if it goes well, I would actually be intrigued to see Warhorse Studios develop a Game of Thrones RPG, open world or not. 8th is the one developer that could combine many aspects of their games and put it into one brilliant title. That developer is Obsidian Entertainment. I mean, how could I not put them on this list? They have made so many brilliant RPG titles, from Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2 to Fallout New Vegas to South Park The Stick of Truth and to Pillars of Eternity, just to name a few. If they were to combine all aspects to one title, we could get a brilliant Game of Thrones game. If any developer can do RPG titles right, it's them. I do believe they could succeed with a Game of Thrones RPG. The story of Pillars of Eternity is brilliant. The open world of Fallout New Vegas could be expanded into something great to give us an open world Westeros. The combat of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, they just have the right stuff to make a perfect Game of Thrones RPG. And again, it's not unlike them to make a game based off of big intellectual property, because as I said before, they did do Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. So here's hoping that maybe Obsidian can get the rights for a Game of Thrones RPG. Heck, maybe work with Bethesda to help use the rights, because let's be honest, it might not be easy for them to do it themselves. 9th is Monolith Productions. Now, I don't really know if they make a Game of Thrones story-driven game work, if I'm honest, because they haven't really done a story that excels brilliantly. Sure, their Middle-earth games wasn't bad for story, but I really don't think it was something that was too out there memorable. Saying that though, their gameplay could work really well. They might be able to make this not a story-driven game, but they could make a game that's more of a sandbox title based on the Game of Thrones license, where the characters are there and they could fight to be the king or queen, and you could play as a character who could decide the tide of a battle. They could really make a Game of Thrones game work there, especially with their Nemesis system. Now it's just a question of how would they relate this well? That's the issue I have no answer for. And 10th and finally, I've decided to go the one developer who did okay, and that's Cyandide Studios. They are the only developer as right now to make a Game of Thrones RPG, and they did an alright job. It wasn't open world and the combat was criticised, but they could still make a Game of Thrones game work. If they were to rework the combat system, maybe even add an open world game, they could really make a brilliant Game of Thrones game work. It wasn't like their last game did bad for story. If anything, it was the most praised point of the title. It's considered one of the best stories, and it's a very worthy addition to the Game of Thrones lore. So I'm putting this on this list mostly because the last attempt wasn't that bad, and the issues that were there could be fixed if done again. Though then again, we don't actually know if they could use the license if, for reasons such as the last one didn't work. But that's all for the list. What do you think about it? Do you think these developers could make a Game of Thrones game work? Did I miss any obvious developer that could make it work, or add one that didn't make any sense? I'm intrigued to see what you have to say about this list, so don't forget to comment that down below. And heck, if you did like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, it helps a ton.